The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of a black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have harmed us little, but someday the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. Hi, I'm Rich, this is Pen and Board, and I'm here to try and convince you why you should be playing Call of Cthulhu. Let's go. Call of Cthulhu is a horror tabletop roleplay game published by Chaosium and set in the cosmic horror worlds of H.P. Lovecraft. Set in the 1920s America, the game focuses more on investigation and roleplay, where knowledge can be just as dangerous as a gun, and losing your mind is all part of the story. You play as ordinary people, or investigators as they're called, alongside a keeper who runs the game, all to uncover truths of unknowable and indescribable eldritch beings. And often the more you learn, the worse things get. It is a skill-based system and there are no classes. You have skills like spot hidden, stealth, mechanical repair, and the ever-useful library use. Trust me, it is more useful than it sounds. It uses a percentile system, so each skill has a number 1 to 100, you roll a d100 and you try and get under that skill. There are degrees of success and failure above and below if you roll enough under or enough over your skill, which can be used to set the difficulty rating of a skill check or give you more information if you are more successful. So for instance, that mechanical repair roll you're making to repair the generator in this abandoned lighthouse that you've come across, if you just simply succeed, you repair it, the lights turn on. If you get a hard success, you may discover that the generator has been sabotaged. If you get an extreme success, then you might figure out that it was done recently, as in, since you've been here. And that local that turned up to help was a bit too friendly. There are also critical successes and critical fails to give you enough variety in your dice roll results. However, you are not just left to the whims of the dice gods. If you fail a roll and you really want to try and succeed, you have two options. First one, you can simply spend luck, a player resource that you can use to make up the difference between your roll and a success, or any other degrees of success you want. You spend it, you get rid of it, you succeed on the roll. There are some consequences to that because a keeper might decide to ask you to roll a luck roll for something to happen during the game, so having a lower luck score is not always the best thing. The second thing you can do is to push your roll. This allows you to re-roll it. And nothing bad can happen. Nope. Don't worry about it, nothing bad can happen, you can just push it.
Just push it. Just push it. Just push the roll. Just push it!
However, a player has to justify how they are pushing their skills to the limit to get potentially a success out of a failure. And there's a bit of a social contract with the keeper that if you are going to push your roll and your pushed roll is failed, then there are going to be some greater consequences for your character or the situation. So pushing it can actually be a very dangerous option. There are no levels really either. Your character can progress if they use a skill in a session. At the end of the session, you then roll to see if you increase that skill. And there are no classes, as I already mentioned. Although your character does have an occupation, which gets to determine what skills they are more proficient in and their kind of social standing amongst the rest of the group. While the focus is on investigation, there is some room for combat. And it is often the last resort and usually a bad idea, but you can do it if you want. You roll opposed rolls with the attacker and defender, with the defender choosing to either dodge or fight back if available. Firearms also exist, but are quite deadly, well, mainly for the humans, the players, and anyone else that is not an eldritch horror that doesn't really concern themselves with material weaponry. So combat is there, but it should be rare, it should be tense, and it is most always a bad idea. The true star of the show is the sanity system. Each character has a sanity score, and as they uncover the horrors of the scenario, like for instance a dead body, or opening up some arcane lore, or witnessing an eldritch horror appear out of nowhere, they're going to start losing some sanity. If you lose too much in one go, then you might have a slight bout of madness, taking over your character's actions and doing something like, for instance, screaming in the corner for 10 minutes. If you lose too much sanity in a single session, then your character might suffer a bit more mental trauma that lasts a bit longer. Things like new phobias, delusions, or the breaking of your psyche and your fundamental understanding of reality. So that's the overview, and if I've convinced you to play Call of Cthulhu, then I've done my job. You can like and subscribe and do other things, and check out some of my other Why You Should Play videos. If you aren't convinced yet and need a little more convincing, then stick around as we dive a little deeper. While the sanity system potentially sounds like a massive red flag for those that want to keep their tabletop role-playing game away from potentially large triggers, it is the genius part of the system. And I will say, if you're playing Call of Cthulhu and any other tabletop roleplay games, please make sure you have your safety tools sorted before the game. Make sure you go over any potential triggers and everything else like that with your keeper and your players. If you do have triggers in body horror, sanity loss, and the unknown, then potentially Call of Cthulhu is not going to be the game for you. And you don't have to go into big body horror or anything weird and wonderful in Call of Cthulhu by itself, and there are ways to maneuver around some of the more triggering aspects if you wanted to. Back to sanity, and it is not just a health pool for your brain. It is a mechanical device to allow story elements to come out and your character's journey throughout investigation to be marked at certain points. As characters start to lose their sanity and have these little bouts of madness, then the reality of the horror of the scenario comes out and adds lots of extra tension, which allows this to be a horror tabletop roleplay game. And in this setting, knowledge is often very dangerous. The more you learn, the more you can lose. One of my favourite aspects of the sanity system is that if you do lose a lot of sanity in one go, then you can potentially have this bout of madness. Before you do have the bout of madness, you have to roll an intelligence check. And this is to see if you comprehend the things that are happening to you or around you. You actually want to try and fail this check, because if you succeed, then you understand what's happening to you, and then you will be driven mad by it. So if you fail it, then you can just carry on in ignorant bliss. Oh, that's not a dead body over there. He's just resting. Yeah, he's just resting. And this makes storytelling incredible and showcases the results of negative consequences and how it can drive the story forwards, both for the character and for the overall arcs. If you like detective stories, true crime, and investigations, then this is the game for you. If you've come here to punch cultists and Cthulhu in the face, then you might need to look elsewhere, or stick around for a little later where there might be a little suggestion for you. It is a mystery-focused and clue-driven system where you will be reading journals, uncovering secrets, following breadcrumbs, and trying to piece disparate pieces of information together to get a grander scale of things. And it is extremely satisfying to uncover the truth in these games. Although sometimes you'll probably end a session a bit more confused than you did at the start because, you know, Lovecraftian horror be Lovecrafting. If you're a keeper and you're a little apprehensive and terrified of the concept of potentially running a global conspiracy theory with your players, then please hold on and don't be afraid to start this. There are some amazing pre-written, official and unofficial scenarios and campaigns out there that have been designed and written in a way to make a keeper's life as easy as possible. But I won't lie to you, it is going to require a little more prep than your classic dungeon crawl. I'd recommend reading the source materials multiple times in preparation and taking your own notes, just so you know how all these pieces fit together, because your players are probably going to go off the rails and they are the ones that are going to be super confused. If you're wanting to start out, I'd highly recommend The Haunting. It is essentially a haunted house scenario where your players jump into it, and it will teach you as a keeper and your players how to run a Call of Cthulhu game. It will also teach you the expectations of what a Call of Cthulhu game is and consists of. One of my favourite alternative introductory scenarios is the Saturnine Chalice, and it really gives you an opportunity to mess with your players, and I feel encapsulates the idea of the mythos a little better than a classic haunted house. If you're ready to jump into a huge global conspiracy, then you can go on the globe-trotting campaign The Masks of Nyarlathotep, where you will be travelling the world and uncovering cultists everywhere to uncover this huge mystery. The 1920s is also the perfect setting for this type of horror. You have a post-World War I paranoia, which means everyone is already suspicious of everyone else. You also have an occult revival. As the sciences start to bloom, so does interest in the occult, and where those two meet and the grey area between the explained and unexplainable happens is where some really interesting things can happen. And the eldritch aspects of the mythos can start filling in some of the gaps. Given that it's set in America as well, prohibition is in effect. Drinking is still fashionable, although now with a little added danger, as you have ordinary law-abiding citizens that can potentially be muddling and interacting with the seedy underbelly and criminals. And once again, where these two meet is where this mythos grey area can really get interesting. Unlike fantasy settings, this feels very grounded and extremely relatable. Once again, you're playing ordinary people and you can make instant connections with the characters you are playing, and the time period is not too distant that it feels so unrelatable. You still have things like telephones and photography and all that kind of stuff that kind of grounds it in reality a bit more. And you can truly make your sessions quite unique at the table as well. It's not too difficult to get up and dressed into a 1920s garb. You can dim the lights for that more flickering low level of electricity, and you can set some jazz off in the background and increase the ambience of the table. And this all leads to a more immersive experience that allows the horror and the mythos to breathe a little bit. But it is more than just the 1920s, and if you do want to be punching your cultists in the face, then you can look up Pulp Cthulhu. In that you are playing a more heroic character, think more Indiana Jones rather than Bob the Accountant. If you want to exchange the jazz and prohibition of America with the foggy streets of England, class stratification and the British Empire, then you can check out Cthulhu by Gaslight. If you prefer a more Sherlock Holmes or Jack the Ripper vibes, then this is going to be the one for you. If you want to get a little more medieval in this place, then you can check out Cthulhu Dark Ages. It's a historical setting in the 10th century, where everything is lit by fire. There is superstition, religion, Viking raids, and an extreme hierarchy of society. And who can't resist playing some monks trying to fight off eldritch horrors? If you want to buck all the historical stuff, then you can dive into Modern Cthulhu, which translates all of the Call of Cthulhu stuff into the modern era with equipment and skills. There's even a Wild West setting in Down Darker Trails, and there are a bunch of other niche settings if you want to go and find them. It is roleplay heavy and mechanically light rules-wise, which makes it a perfect beginner-friendly game. The percentile system is intuitive. You have a skill with a number, you need to roll under that skill. There are no spell slots, there are no gridded combat. There is a lot available there if you want to go deeper as well, and if your characters are progressing through the campaign, your players can actually start to unlock some of the forbidden lore as well. There is magic, there is spells, there are deeper systems in there if you wish to use them. But at its core, it is an extremely beginner-friendly game, which I think allows non-gamer people to come into the tabletop roleplay space, because once again, you are playing ordinary people that are extremely relatable, and the roleplay suddenly becomes so much easier. It is much easier to play Bill the Accountant facing off against eldritch horrors than it is Igvar the half-orc cleric fighting off against a dragon. Call of Cthulhu is like a horror film that you get to play in and determine the outcome of. You are not going to become heroic heroes of the age or defeat cosmic gods. You may survive, maybe, and sometimes, if you're lucky, you might delay the inevitable doom. And that's a big win in Call of Cthulhu. It is one of my favourite systems to run and play, and one of my go-to systems for introducing people into the tabletop roleplay space, and role-playing in general, because at its core it is extremely beginner-friendly and extremely relatable as well. Obviously, if you're not into the horror aspects of things, this is not going to be for you, but for those that want to dabble in a bit of roleplay in the mysteries of the mythos, then I'd highly recommend checking this out. And I believe it occupies a very unique space in the tabletop roleplay genre, something that you don't get from fantasy settings like Dungeons and Dragons, and an experience that is unique to itself. So, let me know your thoughts. Are you a big Call of Cthulhu fan, or are you potentially going to start playing it soon? If you like this video, you know what to do, and if you're subscribed, I thank you. If you want to check out some other Why You Should Play videos, then there should be some video link here somewhere. It should be fairly obvious. But until next time, see you later.